Dito po sa ating programa, mapapakinggan po ninyo ang Just Clean Air Band, ang ating banda rito, sa mga awiting bakahulugan. Pakinggan po ninyo ang nilalaman ng kanilang mga awit. Panoorin po ninyo ang mga larawan na makikita ninyo sa programa. At sana ho, kahit papano, makapagbahagi po kami ng damdamin ng tunay na Pilipino. Ang Pilipino ay hindi basta-basta sumusuko. Hindi tayo naghahanap ng away. Pero kung tayo po ay gusto ng tapakan ng ating mga karapatan, alam nyo naman, ang Pilipino ay lumalaban din. No? Kaya gusto ko lang bigyang diin sa ngalan po ng ating mga kasama sa programa, ang West Philippine Sea, kalakhang bahagi po niyan, malapit sa ating baybaying dagat, ay atin. Ipaglaban po natin ang karapatan. Atin po ang West Philippine Sea. Karapatan ng Pilipinong ipagtanggol ang kanyang hanap buhay at ang kanyang kinagisnang lupain at karagatan. Dito po sa ating programa, mapapakinggan po ninyo ang Just Clean Air Band, ang ating banda rito, sa mga awiting makahulugan. Pakinggan po ninyo ang nilalaman ng kanilang mga awit. Panoorin po ninyo ang mga larawan na makikita ninyo sa programa. At sana ho, kahit papano, makapagbahagi po kami ng damdamin ng tunay na Pilipino. Ang Pilipino ay hindi basta-basta sumusuko. Hindi tayo naghahanap ng away. Pero kung tayo po ay gusto ng tapakan ng ating mga karapatan, alam nyo naman, ang Pilipino ay lumalaban din. No? Kaya gusto ko lang bigyang diin sa ngalan po ng ating mga kasama sa programa. Ang West Philippine Sea, kalakhang bahagi po niyan, malapit sa ating baybaying dagat, ay atin. Ipaglaban po natin ang karapatan. Atin po ang West Philippine Sea. Karapatan ng Pilipinong ipagtanggol ang kanyang hanap buhay at ang kanyang kinagisnang lupain at karagatan.
uh, President of Manila Bulletin, presently, President Manila Bulletin. Ang ating panahuhin ay si Commodore J. Tariela ng Philippine Coast Guard at ang chairman ng Commission on the Climate Change Commission, Albert de la Cruz. Sunny, batiin mo muna yung ating mga kasama. Thank you, Senator Joey. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. We have a very interesting, timely, and relevant topic today. And our overarching concern is the reality of climate change, which is also shaped by the state of our environment. And of course, when we say environment, it includes the land, the air, and the sea, but most especially the sea, considering that the Philippines is an archipelagic nation surrounded by water. So I think it may be well, Senator Joey, to ask our guests to give us an overview of the current situation. What are our national concerns with respect to climate change and the environment? And perhaps we can invite Climate Change Commissioner De La Cruz to give us that overview.
Thank you, Secretary Sani. Good morning, Senator Joey and Commodore Tariela. Good morning po. And to the members of the multimedia, magandang umaga po sa ating lahat. At first, at the onset, let me say na sa atin, West Philippine Sea, parang yung isang bahay, kapag mayroong ginawa sa loob ng bahay mo, natural lang magre-react ka. May magnanakaw, may maninira ng bahay mo, magre-react ka. And that's why we are here today, in order for us to shout it loud that there is something happening, specifically with regards to the environment. More than 12,000 hectares already of our marine biodiversity shelter, so to speak, ano po, ang nasira na at kasalukuyan pa rin nasisira. Because of this, if you can see, kapag yung tinatawag na cut and fill method ng pagtambak, this is already happening. But unfortunately, ito po'y ginagawa sa mismong bahay ng mga isda. At sinabi natin na atin ang Philippine Sea, but really, we are the guardian, we are the protector of this. Dahil atin yan. Kaya lang ang problema, baka akala ng mga karatig bansa, sinosolo natin yan. Hindi po. Ito po'y pangitlugan ng mga isda. Dito lumalaki yung mga isda, at yung mga isdang yan na hindi naman mananatili lang sa Pilipinas. Yan ay tutungo sa buong rehiyon, baka tutungo sa iba't ibang parte ng mundo. But unfortunately, because of what is happening now, sinisira natin mismo ang bahay, pangitlugan ng mga isda. Dahil dito, wala na yung bahay, wala nang mangingitlog, kaya kakaunti na lamang yung isda. Kasama po dito, yung tinatawag nating point of no return insofar as the impactful causes of these damages to our marine environment. Ano po yan? Yung tinatawag nating pagtaas ng tubig ng ating karagatan dahil sa climate change, mayroon pong mas malaking epekto ang nangyayari sa marine environment sa West Philippine Sea. Ang mga isda po dyan, yung kanilang bahay, yan po ang nagka-calcify ng ating mga coastal environment. Ano po ibig sabihin yan? Kapag tayo po ay nagsiswimming sa ating mga karagatan, nakakita po kayo ng mga maliliit na parang mga chok. Yan po ay yung mga nagdwindle na o yung mga nagretiro na bahay ng mga isda. Pero dahil yan ay inaalis natin at pinatay ng ating mga kagagawa, yung tinatawag nating anthropogenic activity because of the geopolitics, what is happening now in the West Philippine Sea, ang mangyayari po dyan, wala nang hahawak sa soil o sa lupa. Kaya yung coastal ecosystem natin, maaari po na magkaroon ng triple effect, hindi lamang sa pagtaas ng antas ng tubig, kung hindi po babagsak. Pangalawa, alam po natin yung tubig ay yun yung nagre-reflect ng sun. Ano po? Yung heat ng sun, dyan po nagre-reflect. Kaya kapag yan po ay ating pong violate yung tinatawag na harmony and balance with nature, wala na magre-reflect sa init na dulot ng ating araw. Kaya ito po ay i-absorb mismo ng Earth. Kaya ang nangyayari po sa West Philippine Sea, it will be having a big impact not only for our country, but for the rest of the world specifically. At we want to point out that one-third of the marine biodiversity of the Philippines is located in the West Philippine Sea. And that is why one-third of our food security insofar as marine food is concerned ay nandyan sa West Philippine Sea. Kaya dapat lamang po na ito po ay mapagtuunan ng pansin at kung kailangan po magsampa ng kaukulang kaso, not only with regards to the environmental impact, but also with regards to the violation of human rights, specifically sa ating mga fisher folks, yung ating mga malilit na mga isda na dating nakakapasok dyan, na hindi na nakakapasok, yan po ay violation sa kanilang karapatan, sa kanilang hanap buhay. Yan lang po ay isa sa mga ilan lamang sa mga tinatawag nating impact sa nangyayari sa ating West Philippine Sea.
Siguro we could follow it up, Senator Joey, by asking Commodore J. Tariela of the Philippine Coast Guard to give us their perspective. Kasi sila din po ay isa sa mga tinalagang guardians of the sea.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Sir Joey, for inviting me here. Magandang umaga po sa inyong lahat. On the part of the Philippine Coast Guard, you are all aware, my media friends, the journalists here, that we have already started the transparency strategy since last year. No? Some of the media personalities would probably think that the transparency strategy is only limited to the exposure or the publication of the Chinese aggressive actions whenever we carry out military operations and Coast Guard patrol. But that's only one of the reasons why we do the transparency. You know, our transparency is also extended to our intention to protect our marine environment. This is the reason why the Philippine Coast Guard, together with the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, and even the UP Marine Science Institute, are conducting expedition to carry out investigation on those areas na kinikilala nating nasira na. Secondly, the Philippine Coast Guard, as what the good commissioner has mentioned, is also in collaboration with the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources in supporting the livelihood ng ating mga kababayang mga isda. Ang intention po ng ating buting Pangulo, ni President Bongbong Marcos, is for the Filipino people to maximize the resources na kailangan nating i-enjoy sa West Philippine Sea. This is the reason why our Commandant, Admiral Ron Hilgaban, has always been supportive on the efforts of the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources, the DNR, and the Commission on Climate Change para ating matugunan ang pag-iimbestiga sa mga gawain ng China na maaaring makasira sa ating exclusive economic zone. As what the President mentioned, we will not surrender a square inch of our territory. This is the reason why the Armed Forces of the Philippines and the Philippine Coast Guard strategically deploy our assets to make sure that our Filipino fishermen and our marine environment is well guarded and protected. Again, in the Philippine Coast Guard, kami po ay naniniwala na sa West Philippine Sea, ang yaman nito ay para sa Pilipinas.
Kakaiba yung teritoryo sa tinatawag na sovereign rights. Yung sovereignty, you assert that doon sa teritoryo mismo ng ating bansa, Pilipinas. Yung karagatan, 14 kilometers from the shore, yun ang tinatawag na territorial sea. Doon talaga may sovereignty tayo, meaning may control tayo. Walang ibang pwedeng mag-assert ng kapangyarihan doon sa territorial sea. Doon, yung tinatawag na exclusive economic zone, yun ay 200 nautical miles from the shore, pero ang hindi sovereignty ang ginagamit doon sa 200 nautical miles na yon, kung hindi ang tawag doon ay sovereign rights. Ang ibig sabihin, tayo lang ang pwedeng mag-exploit, gumamit ng mga yamang dagat, kasama na yung isda, at iba pang mga aquatic resources doon. Kasama na yung mga pwedeng langis
na nandoon. Isa pa ring resource yun. Even the wind energy in the West Philippine Sea, tayo lang ang pwedeng gumamit doon. Pero may freedom of navigation doon sa area. Pwedeng dumaan-daan ang anumang sasakyang dagat ng ibang bansa. At itong exclusive economic zone is both on the left, on the right, on top, at in the north, in the south. Ito yung tinatawag na exclusive economic zone. And also from the islands of the country, like Palawan, it has its own 200 nautical miles exclusive economic zone. So I just want to put this discussion in perspective na tayo lang ang pwedeng mag-exploit, kumuha ng mga, mag-develop ng marine resources dun sa exclusive economic zone. Ngayon, ang tanong, nakikita ba natin ang mga nangyayari diyan sa malawak na exclusive economic zone? Nabanggit ni Commissioner Albert na ang lawak na ng economic ecosystem degradation or destruction that is going on diyan sa ating exclusive economic zone, particularly sa West Philippine Sea. The West Philippine Sea is part of the Big South China Sea. So, ang tanong, nakikita ba natin in real time kung ano yung nangyayari dyan, kung may illegal activities na nangyayari dyan, kung mayroong dredging na nangyayari dyan, mayroong illegal fishing. Kung Pilipino ang nangingisda, walang violation. Mga Pilipino yan eh. Pero kung ibang bansa, ibang fishermen, ibang bansa, ang nandyan, illegal yon, sapagkat tayo lamang ang may karapatan mangisda doon sa West Philippine Sea at saka doon sa Philippine rice or doon sa taas ng Batanes or sa baba ng Tawi-Tawi. Tayo lamang ang pwedeng mangisda dyan. Tayo lang pwedeng mag-research dyan for oil. Although we can waive it if we allow others to do a joint research. The question, I'll go back to the question. In real time, do we know what is happening in our Philippine seas, including the exclusive economic zone? At paano? Commodore.
Yes, sir. Thanks, sir. Well, initially, sir, before we started the transparency strategy, our government is only dependent on the Coast Guard vessels that we deploy in the West Philippine Sea together with the Armed Forces of the Philippines for the limited number of vessels of the Philippine Navy and also the aircraft of the Philippine Air Force to monitor whatever is happening in the West Philippine Sea. But since we have become more transparent about illegal presence, provocative action of China, more countries extended their support to the Armed Forces of the Philippines and to the Philippine government as a whole. They are now providing us satellite imagery of real time about the situation in the West Philippines. One good example is the Canadian government. They have provided us what they call the dark vessel detection program, wherein multiple satellites can already give us a clear imagery of what are the vessels that are deployed in the West Philippine Sea, what are their possible activities, and not just the Australian government, we also, the Canadian government, we are also being supported by the United States and other like-minded states to provide us a real-time scenario of what is really happening in the West Philippines.
At dahil alam natin ang nangyayari sa West Philippine Sea, kahit na sa Philippine rice, dapat na pinag-uusapan na rin natin kasi may mga interest na rin. Dati, Benham rice yung tawag, that we rename it as Philippine rice. Sapagkat alam natin ang nangyayari sa tulong na rin ng ating mga kaalyadong bansa. Ang susunod na tanong ay yung bang mga impormasyon na nalalaman natin, real time nangyayari. At dagdag dun sa satellite, yung sa klase face to face, nakikita naman natin na yan. In real time also, nakikita natin kung may island na o may reclamation na ginagawa. Yung ating mga boats nakakarating na doon sa mga area na yon. Kung alam na natin na nangyayari, yung ba nagiging basihan ng aksyon na ginagawa ng ating pamahalaan? At pwede nyo bang sabihin kung walang mababiolate na security matter, pwede nyo sabihin kung ano yung aksyon na ginagawa natin batay sa informasyon na nakukuha natin dyan sa Philippine Seas?
Yes, sir. There are two common reasons why the Chinese maritime forces are deploying their maritime militia vessels in our exclusive economic zone, particularly in the West Philippines. The first reason is that they just want to occupy a particular maritime feature. We call this swarming of the Chinese maritime militia. And then the second possibility is that they are in support of preventing the Philippine government in carrying out patrols. So in those instances that we already have advanced satellite imagery to know that more than 50 Chinese maritime militia vessels, for example, are staying in Julian, Philippines. That will be the basis for the Philippine Coast Guard to either send an aircraft or send a vessel, document their presence, and then publicize it. Because we know for a fact that every time we publicize the illegal presence of the Chinese maritime militia that are swarming within our exclusive economic zone, the Chinese government, a few days after it's publicized, they will eventually leave. And then the second one is every time that those Chinese maritime militia would prevent the Philippine Coast Guard vessel or harass the Filipino fishermen, and those instances that we have existing legitimate Coast Guard or even military operation in the West Philippine Sea, we're pretty much reliant on our embedded journalists. So they document the illegal presence and the harassment of the Chinese government. So in short, the satellite imagery that they are providing us helps us in strategically optimizing our limited assets for us to counter their illegal presence, sir.
So may positive result itong pag-publish ninyo kung ano yung nangyayari sa West Philippine Sea. Ang nababanggit niyo yung mga Chinese militia at saka mga Chinese Coast Guard din. Since napapublish ito, nagbabago ba yung kilos ng China? Nagdadahan-dahan na ba sila? Or patuloy pa rin sila sa kanilang ginagawa? Nabanggit mo, after one publication, yung swarming ay unti-unti nagdi-dissipate na, nawawala na sila. So may positibo namang resulta yung publication. So ito ba ang magiging strategy ng Philippine government na because information are available, presence of this vessel, Coast Guard or even military military Navy vessels, Chinese Navy vessels, nakikita din at nare-report nyo din. Will this serve as a deterrent to any foreign country na encroaching into our West Philippine in our Philippine seas and conduct activities that are inimical to our interests?
Yes, sir. Before I respond to your question, sir, let me highlight the fact, the objectives of the transparency strategy of the Philippine government. When President Bongbong Marcos was elected as president, he has to deal with two things. No? For him to be able to unite the Filipino people in standing up and responding to Chinese aggression, he has to tell the Filipinos that there is really a level of threat and aggression on the part of the People's Republic of China. Because there came a point during the previous administration, parang ang hirap nang sabihan ng mga Pilipino na meron talagang threat, merong harassment na nangyayari. That's why he has to deal with the Filipinos as president for us to be united. So his approach was, let us publicize and tell the Filipino people, because it is the responsibility of the national government to tell every Filipinos what is at stake in the West Philippine Sea. That is the reason, that's the first reason why we are doing this transparency. And then the second one is, how can we be able to rally support from the international community kung nung nakaraang administrasyon, we never really leverage on the arbitral award. So, in short, we need to be sincere with our efforts in really countering Chinese aggression. So, the only way for us to show the international community that we are really certain about our position now in the West Philippine Sea is to expose Chinese aggression, and then for them to really learn about the presence of the Chinese Coast Guard and then the PLA Navy and even the Chinese Maritime Militia. Since February of 2023, wherein the first time we publicized the military-grade laser incident, this became the start of our transparency strategy. Based on the recent survey, more Filipinos now are aware of what's happening in the West Philippine Sea, and more than 80% Filipinos are supportive with our efforts in responding to China threat in the West Philippine Sea. So the first objective was already met by President Bongbong Marcos. The second objective, we can see for a fact that every time that the president has these foreign trips, more countries are extending security cooperation. More countries are pledging their support for the modernization of the armed forces of the Philippines and even the capability building of the Philippine Coast Guard. Again, that second objective was also attained already. Now, the question is the transparency strategy also sending positive impact regarding the China threat, which is your question, sir? I would argue that using the swarming as an example, na every time we publicize it, umaalis sila, that's already a positive impact. Meaning, the Chinese government really hates the idea that the international community will be condemning and criticizing their actions, especially in those instances that we're going to tag them that they have illegal presence, damaging the marine environment, and harassing the Filipino fishermen. And then the second operational changes that we noticed with the Chinese Coast Guard is that before, whenever they tail or follow the Philippine Coast Guard whenever we patrol, they're usually doing that from side to side. Kumbaga sir, magkatabi lagi. So it's very difficult for our smaller Coast Guard vessel to patrol the entire West Philippine Sea because they are bigger and they usually tail us side by side. So for you to be able to maneuver, it's dependent on wherever they want you to go. But because of our transparency, the Chinese Coast Guard vessels now are not doing this kind of tailing. They are doing it from behind because they are thinking that the Philippine Coast Guard vessels will either be embedded with media or journalists, or we have powerful HD cameras to document again their harassment. But again, this kind of operational changes of the Chinese Coast Guard cannot be seen in those two areas that nito mga nakarang araw has really dominated media, in Ayungin Shoal and Bajo de Masinloc. So the Filipino people only reads the news about Ayungin Shoal. So masasabi nila siguro na mas sumataas ang tension because the resupply operation is getting more difficult than before because water cannon, jet stream water cannon was used against the Onaisa May last March 23. There was also a question, sir, that was asked to me. If the transparency strategy of the Philippine government was really effective, how come that more vessels now on the Chinese part, whether they are Chinese Coast Guard, Chinese Maritime Militia, or PLA Navy warships, are being documented more frequently compared before we started the transparency strategy? So my argument is very simple. Because during the past administration, since we never publicized the harassment and the illegal presence of the Chinese forces, there's no reason for them to increase their deployment of vessels. Because in short, they don't have to coerce our government from preventing us to maintain our presence in the West Philippine Sea. Because we have already that defeatist mind of thinking na We don't need to deploy our vessels dahil magkakagera. But for this administration, for President Bongbong Marcos, we have intensified the transparency. We expose the illegal presence of the Chinese. We tell the international community about the harassment of the Filipino fishermen. We keep on documenting the damage to the environment of the Chinese forces. Ito ang pinakaayaw nila. And the only way that they can be able to convince or coerce our government to stop what we're doing is to deploy more vessels. They're intensifying the level of threat for us to be prevented in doing our effective approach of transparency, sir.
Before I ask Annie to shoot more questions, let me go back to Commissioner Albert de la Cruz from the Climate Change Commission. You mentioned a while ago that there is massive destruction that has happened already in the West Philippine Sea. How many exactly can you highlight and emphasize the destruction that has happened in the West Philippine Sea as far as the marine resources are available? Hindi ko maintindihan yung palang shoreline natin, yung dalampasigan natin, yung pala'y mauumos yun kasi yung mga sand doon ay lalamunin ng dagat kung walang replenishment. Nare-replenish pala yun. Can you explain that? And number two, ano yung pagkagawa ng artificial islands sa West Philippine Sea, anong impact noon sa marine ecosystem ng West Philippine Sea at anong impact nito sa mundo? Tayo lang bang apektado nito? Itong destruction na nangyayari sa West Philippine Sea?
Yes, Mr. Senator. Ang kabuuang datos po ay more or less nasa 12,000 hectares na bahay or coral reef ang nasira na. Damage, meaning irreparable damage.
Of coral reef.
Of coral reef.
Ano ba yung saysay ng coral reef?
Ang coral reef po, ito yung bahay, pangitlugan, dito lumalaki yung ating mga isda. At sinabi ko na kanina, yung isda na yan ay nag-host ang Pilipinas dahil pag-aari natin ng West Philippine Sea. Pero hindi naman natin pwede sabihin sa isda kapag lumaki na, nasa Pilipinas ka lang. Yan po ay maaaring magtungo sa Vietnam, sa China. Kaya kapag dinurog natin yan at winasak natin ang pangitlugan ng mga isda, baka hindi lamang ang Pilipinas ang magkakaroon ng problema, kung hindi ang buong rehiyon o ang buong mundo. At sa Pilipinas po, katulad ng masabi natin kanina, 1/3 of our marine biodiversity, specifically this coral reef, ay nandito sa lugar na ito. If I may point out some of the specific degradation sa ating marine environment, we have here, we have what we call the biodiversity loss. Ang biodiversity loss, kahit yung pinakamaliit na isda, even the phytoplankton, kapag yan ay mayroong nawala at nagkaroon ng extinctions, it will affect the life cycle, including the total food chain within the environment. Number two, the strap of the food chain. Sinabi ko ang mga isda ang kinakain nila phytoplankton, kasama na yung mga seagrasses. At ang seagrasses po dyan, yan yung mga halaman na nasa marine environment na nag-absorb. They serve as what we call the carbon sequester. At ang ating marine environment yan ay nag-i-emit din ng carbon dioxide including methane. At kung wala po yan, lalo pong umiinit ang ating mundo because of these greenhouse gases. Kaya kapag nagkaroon po ng cut and fill, so to speak, dudurugin yung ating mga corals upang doon magkaroon ng reclamations, mawawala ang seagrasses, mawawala ang corals, lalo pong titindi ang ating greenhouse gases, and that's what we call climate change. And then of course, the habitat fragmentations, ang natural habitat po ng marine ecosystem natin, kamukha dito sa terrestrial ecosystem, we're living in one ecosystem. Meaning to say, hindi mo pwedeng sabihin na kami lang mabubuhay, kaya dyan hindi mabubuhay. Kapag yan po ay parang sirkito yan, parang series of circuit, ang marine ecosystem na yan, yung 12 hectares na yan, ay makaka-apekto, hindi lamang mismo doon sa mismong namatay, kung hindi sa ibang buhay ng dagat at saka sa ibang marine environment, yan ay mayroong mga tinatawag nating network of life, and that's what we call life cycle within the marine environment na makaka-apekto mismo sa terrestrial living. Tayo po yun, mga tao. At ganoon din po, if I may also point out, next slide, upang makita ho ng ating mga kababayan. Ito po yung mga consequences sa coastal community. Baka akala natin, nangyayari yan sa dagat, walang consequences sa coastal community. Livelihood loss, ayan po yung nafe-feel ng ating mga kababayan mangingisda. Ayan, nasabi ho natin kanina, this is a violation of their human rights. Number two, food insecurity, increased vulnerability, and cultural erosion. Ano po? Kasama po dito ang cultural erosion. Bakit po? Ang kultura ng mga mangingisda natin, yung kanilang practices na sabi ko kanina ni Commodore na dati nakakatungo sila dyan, yung kanilang mga anak natuturuan nilang mangisda. Anong mangyayari sa mga susunod na henerasyon ng mga mangingisda? There will be a disruption of cultural traditions na naging kasama na sa pamumuhay ng ating mga kababayan. Next slide, please. And we also have these economic implications. We have this reduced tourism, reduced in the tourism revenue. We have increased cost for coastal protection. Nasabi kanina ng ating butihing senador na yung nakikita ho ninyo na puti sa tabing dagat, yan po ay hatid po ng ating marine environment. Yan po ay ang nagbibigay ng proteksyon. Kaya kapag nasira yung mga bahay ng mga isda o nawala ang ating coastal area, and remember, 60% of our Philippine archipelago, local government are located in the coastal area. And more than 1/3 of which is in front of the West Philippine Sea. Imagine that, babagsak ang coastal area natin kapag nawala ho itong marine ecosystem, itong coral reef, na ngayon po ay more than 12,000 hectares na po ang nawawala.
Kung pwede tayong dumako naman doon sa climate change aspect. No? Kung maaalala natin, yung kasalukuyang Paris Agreement na nagtakda ng isang target na not more than 2 degrees centigrade global warming, ay pinanggagalingan na ng malawak na pagkaabala or concern dahil sa nakikita na tila malapit nang ma-reach yung o na-breach na yung kasalukuyang 1.5%. No? At yan din ay naganap dahil doon sa pagiging climate vulnerable ng ating bansa. Baka pwede nating hilingin kay Commissioner Albert na talakay naman yung aspect na vulnerability to climate change. No? Dahil tayo ay isang paboritong destinasyon ng mga malalakas na bagyo. No? At malawak din na nagiging pinsala sa ating mga komunidad. Commissioner Albert.
Opo, ayon po sa IPCC, ang Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, nagkaroon sila ng tinatawag na 6-cycle report. We reached a point of no return. Ang ibig kong sabihin yan, ayon sa Secretary General Antonio Gutierrez, na the humanity is as if standing on a thin sheet of ice and the same ice is melting. We do have a very, very thin opportunity. Number one, do not distract the environment. Number two, we don't need to use more fossil fuel, including coal. Number three, we need to have a green transition by means of using renewable energy. And then number four, we need to have what we call a paradigm shift. In order for us to solve the cost brought about by the abnormalities of climate change, we need to have what we call individual change. Paano po yan? Halimbawa ho ngayon, kakain tayo, kapag kumain po tayo, see to eat na, kuhanin lang natin yung kaya nating maubos, upang yan po hindi magtungo sa landfill. As of now, unfortunately, we are appropriating public funds to destroy the environment. How it is? We're using landfill. Sa ibang bansa, wala ng landfill. They're using waste to energy. Nung elementary tayo, high school, tinuruan naman tayo sa science class natin. Ang sinasabi natin lagi, matter cannot be destroyed. It can only be converted to one place or to another, or it can be converted to energy using another energy. So that is why, ano ang sabi ng ating Pangulo, even the United Nations, it is not supposed to be, it should not be business as usual. It has to be science-based, at the same time, data-driven way of governance. And that's why we're campaigning to the local government unit. Before, local government, they will only be serving what we call basic needs. Now, no more. They have to serve basic needs based on scientific, data-driven way of doing things. Simply because we do have a thin opportunity, at least to mitigate and for us to be able to cope up and to adapt in order for us to become a resilient city. Laging sinasabi ho ng ating Pangulo, buhay, bahay, kinabukasan ng ating mga kabataan ang nakasalalay sa usapin tungkol sa climate change. And that is why we need to have individual change, and we're calling for a whole of community approach, whole of nation approach para po ma-resolve ang problema natin sa climate change. But still, we believe in the strength of the Filipino. We are the most resilient country in the whole world. Sabi ko nga, we can even sing video, okay, ano, kapag ikaw ay nandun na sa mga iba't ibang mga evacuation area, maaari tayong umawi. Pero, kailangan yung adaptability natin hindi ho mauwi sa maladaptation. And that is why we take a Kapihan sa Manila Hotel in order for us to inform our public and to laymanize this climate language. With that, pwede kong i-share sa inyo ang kwento ni Palaka. Si Palaka, kapag nilagay sa balanga, unti-unting ginagatungan ang balanga, si Palaka nag-i-enjoy eh. Pero hindi alam ni Palaka, nagiging tinola na pala si Palaka. That is what we call maladaptation. We don't want that to happen to our people. And that is why we are alarming them. Not to become alarmists, but to inform them.
Siguro po sa dami na nang natalakay dito, yung ating mga kaibigan sa media ay gusto nang magbigay ng kanilang mga tanong. Please approach the mic, identify yourself. Go ahead, please.
Hello po, Sir Clay po from PTV. Sir, sorry, I just want to clarify yung 12,000 hectares. Since when and until when po ito na-i-record? How much po yung value? At saan po ito ma-attribute? Yun po ba ay sa China intrusion alone or sa lahat ng illegal activities in the West Philippine Sea? Thank you.
We can attribute it to the whole anthropogenic activity within the West Philippine Sea. But as you very well know, more than 8,000 of which is attributable to the activities of China. And also with activities of Vietnam specifically. Ang Pilipinas po ho ay wala pa ho siguro doon sa 1,000 or even 500 hectares of which ano. But insofar as the cost, really unimaginable, irreparable. Ang masasabi ko dyan, I really do not know how to compute it, ano? Because when we compute damages, kasama dyan yung opportunity cost. Ano? How can you compute the crying children of the fisher folks na dati kumikita, ngayon hindi kumikita? How can you compute that? These are unimaginable. Hindi ko alam kung paano i-compute. Sorry.
Sir, my follow-up is based on China's activities, malaki po ba yung possibility na lumaki pa yung damage?
The way it's going, the simple answer is yes, if we cannot really impede or mitigate the same. And that is why, ang sabi nga ni Commodore, we're being transparent on this, hindi para gatungan ang sitwasyon. Ako, from the Climate Change Commission, science-based, at the same time, we know no borders. Ang climate change hindi naman yan sa Pilipinas lang o dito sa China lang or Southeast Asia. This is a global problem. Food security is not only the problem of the Philippines, this is a regional problem. And that is why we have to resolve it in a way that we have to think that we are living in a global community with one ecosystem. If you destroy one another, you cannot really build one and destroy with another hand. That is counterproductive. And that is why we're calling na ang buong rehiyon ay kailangan, ang buong mundo ay kailangan tumayo at magkaroon ng tinatawag nating ethical way of doing things.
So ngayon ba, Commodore, mayroon bang ongoing reclamation activities that will lead to construction of additional artificial islands within our exclusive economic zone?
Well, right now, sir, based on the result, no, nung nakaraang pag-aaral ng ating mga kasama sa University of the Philippines, and of course, some of our media friends joined that mission last March 20 to 23, no? Kung saan pinuntahan ng ating mga marine scientists yung case na nakapalibot sa pag-asa. Ito yung K1, K2, K3, and K4, no? Ang pinaka kakaibang na tuklasan ng ating mga marine scientists dito is that those 4Ks ay lumalaki siya. At nakita din ng ating mga kasamahan sa media dito na yung mga case na yon ay nabuo sa pamamagitan ng mga crash corals. So ibig sabihin, mga patay na corals na dinurog and then there is a possibility na itinambak. As what the marine scientists said during our press conference in Pag-asa right after they visited itong K1 and 2, it is something that is unusual. No? It's very atypical for a particular island for a particular K to have that kind of area changes kung saan lumalawak siya at tumataas siya, and the composition ng mga nakatambak dito na crash corals ay hindi maaaring maging way ng natural formation. Again, there's still no clear findings whether somebody dumped it there, but what is clear is that on those 4 cases na pinuntahan ng ating mga marine scientists and media journalists, iyon ay hindi nabuo sa pamamagitan ng isang natural formation.
Okay.
Hi Sir, Christian po sa DWTN. Kay Commodore Tariana, sir. Nabanggit niyo po kanina sir na since we launched yung transparency strategy, nakikita natin na yung China kapag pinapublish natin yung mga actions nila, tumitiklop sila kaagad. Pero we saw in the recent incidents na parang nagiging aggressive sila to the point na even yung mga journalists na nagko-cover, ina-accuse na rin nila sa covering ng mga activities natin. Ano yung basa natin dun, sir? What do you think makes them na parang mas nagiging aggressive sila imbes na tumitiklop sila dahil nakikita ng international community yung mga ginagawa nila sa territory?
Well, let me respond to your question in 2 ways. No? Una sa lahat, when I say na tumitiklop sila in those other areas, as I said, may disclaimer ako, those operational changes cannot be seen sa Ayungin Shoal and Bajo de Masinloc. But when it comes to operational changes of the Chinese Coast Guard in other areas, except in those 2 maritime features, nakita natin yung pagbabago, and when we talk about swarming, umaalis din naman agad sila. Secondly, when you ask me about how they wanted to portray the embedded journalists as troublemakers, as those who fabricate information, the way we interpret it in the National Task Force West Philippines Sea means that we are effective in our transparency approach. Imagine the Chinese government using its propaganda machinery to expose and tell the international community na ang ating mga embedded journalists, media personalities, are the ones telling lies at tayo ang nagiging troublemaker. But in reality, I've always been mentioning this. Philippines is a democratic country. Our journalists here are enjoying freedom of the press, freedom of speech. There is no reason para mag-publicize tayo ng mga kasinungalingan dito. The mere fact that they're doing this, exposing themselves na sinasabi nilang tayo pa ang nagsisinungaling, nagpropvoke sa kanila, gumagawa ng kasinungalingan, ibig sabihin our transparency works effectively.
One follow-up na po kay Commissioner De La Cruz. Yung na-mention po yung figures kanina na malaki na yung damage sa corals ng mga activities ng China, and we see na parang lalaki pa siya if magkukontinue itong mga activities na to. May mga policies ba na pwedeng i-recommend or steps ang CCC to the national government just to respond in this nakakatakot din na posibleng future naman po sa sector ng aquaculture doon sa area because of these activities?
Yeah, at the onset, please allow me to first and foremost to commend the Philippine Coast Guard. We have to be proud of our Philippine Coast Guard. Of course, sa mga sumasama sa media, we're so thankful for this transparency at the same time campaign for non-violence, and that is why We do have a lot of news now, and we do have a lot of support coming from the international community. Ang tanong po is, what is the recommendations? Of course, we need to have more data gathering, and we're looking also forward to talk to the fisher folks to make the necessary investigations on this. You asked me why, simply because our own Philippine Commission on Human Rights, they already declared na ang mga kababayan natin na nagiging biktima ng climate change ay mayroon ding sila rin ay biktima na tinatawag nating violations of human rights. They are human rights victims. So we're looking forward to have all this data so that we will be able to strategically make the necessary policy frameworks and resolutions, and to recommend to the specific government agencies what action should be taken based on our mandate of oversight insofar as the Commission is concerned.
Okay, any other question? Yes.
Good morning po. Earl Tobias, IBC 13. Commissioner and PCG, our dear speakers, good morning po. My question would be, kung gano'n na po kalaki yung pinsala and that the IPCC mandated 2030 as the climate change deadline, essentially we're running out of time. But I have been covering CCC for a while, and there have been several evidences that the Philippines is a responsible part of this global mission to lower our decarbonization, to lower our carbon economy and such that. But how big of a challenge does it impose? That China is parang nagagambala po ba yung efforts natin na responsible naman tayo, pero merong isang external factor na sumisira doon sa trajectory ng ginagawa nating maganda for the climate. And also, could we call this non-responsibility of China na hindi sila nakikiparte sa isang malaking global threat?
First and foremost, let me qualify. Philippines is considered to be a carbon sink country. Okay, we sequester more than what we emit. We only emit around 1/3%. Now, comparable to China, masyadong malayo with regards to emission. Now, malayo na sa emission, supposed to be they should be form part of the mitigations or avoidance and sequestration. But what is happening now, really, it is counterproductive. Kung hindi ka na makatulong, sana wag ka nang maminsala, so to speak. Kaya that is why, again, on our part, this is more than border issue. This is issue of food security. This is issue of life, not only of Filipino, but the whole Southeast Asian nation. And that is why the whole Southeast Asian nation, the whole region, we're calling upon na sa amin ng West Philippine Sea, we're the host of it, and we're now calling upon na kapag sinira yan, hindi na makakapagbigay ng isda ang isang bahay, pangitlugan ng isda na sinira na natin.
With that po, I would like to ask now Commodore J, in the advent of climate change lang din po, and this clearly unnecessary conflict na ginagawa ng China just to keep pushing us on our edge, but of course evident naman na nasa atin yung responsibilidad, we're having maximum tolerance about it, pero ultimately kapag mas lumalakas yung mga bagyo at may ganitong klaseng unnecessary external factor na issue na nangyayari, PCG rin naman ang nasa unang linya ng pag-rescue sa ating mga kababayan sa paglakas ng bagyo o lindol o kahit anong sakuna. Ano lang pong side natin dito when it comes to all of these issues?
Medyo naguluhan ako sa anong catch dito sa question na to.
As we go through time, ultimately, isa sa mga sasalo ay yung inyo pong kagawaran sa pag-assess nitong problema natin na habang lumataas yung tensyon sa West Philippine Sea, nagkakaroon din naman tayo ng isang hamon na dapat din natin tugunan para sa kabuhayan ng mga kababayan. So ano pong gagawin ng PCG about it?
Well, the Philippine Coast Guard has so much diverse function when it comes to our role in the West Philippine Sea, when we talk about maritime safety, at the same time when we also perform our core mandate as well in marine environmental protection. And it is true that we are also mandated when it comes to maritime search and rescue. Despite of the limited assets that we have, the Philippine Coast Guard has proven since we were separated from the Philippine Navy, that we have the competency to carry out this mandate. So I think the Filipino people can still trust our commitment that regardless of whatever impact that the Chinese has been doing in the West Philippine Sea that affects their livelihood, for example, for the Filipino fishermen, that affects climate change that would endanger them because of the super typhoon, and then the Philippine Coast Guard will still carry out search and rescue. I think that won't be a problem. It will just be an additional mandate for the Philippine Coast Guard to fulfill.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Oh, yeah, okay.
If I may, sa statement ni Commodore, that the Filipino can still trust our PCG. Actually, not only trust, we need to commend them. Why? The strategy that they have now, non-violence, this is the strategy of our national hero, Jose Rizal. Non-violence, okay? And then it was replicated by Gandhi. History will tell us na mananalo tayo dito sa ginagawa ng Coast Guard. Thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Ay, sir.
Go ahead.
Good morning po. Ako po si Gina Mape ng DWWW 774. Sir, Commodore Tariela, magandang umaga po. May nababanggit po kayo kanina na transparency sa ginagawa po ng pamahalaan, sa ginagawa nyo with your agriculture embedded journalists. Pero ang nangyayari po, parang hindi naman umi-epekto yung transparency nyo through embedded journalists dito sa ating mga kalaban sa West Philippine Sea. I said kalaban. Ano po ba ang maaari pang magawa ng Philippine Coast Guard para po itong China Coast Guard, yung pwersa ng China, huminto na sa kanilang pinagagagawa sa ating teritoryo. Kasi lumalaon po, tumatagal. Katulad po ng sinabi ni Commissioner, ay palala ng palala ang epekto ng mga aktibidad ng China sa West Philippine Sea. At baka sooner or later, wala na po tayong makakain.
Thank you, ma'am. No? But again, we go back to the real objectives of the transparency strategy. Again, our intention are divided in two reasons. So the first one is to inform the Filipino people for us to have right information to awaken the patriotism of the Filipinos. Ito ang dahilan kung bakit natin napag-uusapan ang issue ng West Philippine Sea. At mas maraming Pilipino na ngayon ang tumitindig, sumusuporta sa ating Pangulo sa pag-address niya sa issue ng West Philippine Sea. In short, we have already attained that first objective. The second objective, for the international community to also rally support to provide us more security cooperation, their commitment in supporting the AFA modernization, and also in condemning and criticizing China regarding the illegal action in the West Philippine Sea. More countries now ang tumitindig din at nag-criticize sa China. Again, this is also an objective that we have already gained since we started this transparency. So it's not true. I would disagree with you kapag sinabi mong walang epekto ang transparency na ginagawa natin na to. Third, as what I mentioned, no, every time we expose and publicize the swarming of Chinese maritime militia in the West Philippine Sea, a few days after, we can expect na aalis din naman sila. Kung ang sukatan lang naman natin is the resupply operation, na masasabi natin tumataas ang tension dahil sa isang issue na to sa Ayungin Shoal. Let me highlight the fact that the West Philippine Sea is so vast, napakalawak nito, for us to generalize na ang level ng threat at ang ineffectivity ng ating transparency can only be defined of what's happening in Ayungin Shoal.
Thank you, sir. Follow-up lang po with due respect. Kasi po sinasabi po ni Commissioner, palala na nga ng palala, 12,000 hectares and all that. It's going to be malawak. Kano po, kailan pa po kikilos ang ating pamahalaan, ang Coast Guard, para matigil yung operasyon na yun dahil namamatay na nga po yung ating mga isda doon.
Well, una sa lahat, ma'am, no? I think the question is wrong when you ask, when is the government going to start? The mere fact that we have already launched our transparency strategy, the mere fact that we are sending marine scientists, embedding journalists for them to document this destructive action of China is already the starting point of the national government in addressing this particular issue. We cannot change the behavior of China overnight. It will take time. But again, it is wrong to say that we are not doing our role.
Okay, how do we paano tayo? Di ba kailangan maging aggressive na ang aksyon para naman matigil na yung lahat-lahat na to? Kasi sa akin po parang nakaka-alarma na. Thank you, sir.
Okay, thank you very much. I think you still want to respond to that,
Well,
Commodore.
I can feel the sentiment of the Filipino people whenever they say that they are already expecting to have a much more aggressive stance when we talk about responding to the West Philippine Sea issue in against the People's Republic of China. But then again, we should understand that our president has been calibrating our approach in the West Philippine Sea. How do we intend to respond to that? Are the Filipino people also thinking of aggressively responding with the level of threat the People's Republic of China is doing? Common sense will dictate that the level of threat that the China can be able to throw at us is something that we can never counter-respond. That is the difficulty on the part of the National Task Force of West Philippine Sea and for President Bongbong Marcos, how he can be able to calibrate that our response in the West Philippine Sea will not trigger a bigger conflict that we all, as Filipinos, are not also prepared for.
Commodore, if I may send continue. I think the response is just equal. Ano? It's just proportional. As mentioned, the strategic response of the Philippine Coast Guard really is truly commendable. The response on non-violence, this is very strategic, and that is why the international community, we are now living in a global community. We do have a lot of positive response now, and again, history will tell na yung mga bully talaga, walang ahantong ang maganda yan. And we have to learn from history na ang ginagawa ngayon ng Philippine Coast Guard is very strategic. We love what they're doing, and the strategy of the President really is very strategic. Hindi tayo nakikipag-away, hindi natin ginagatungan kung ano nangyayari ngayon, but we're looking for a strategic solutions on how to do it.
So, Commissioner, I understand you have a flight to Cebu. Do you want to be?
We have the League of City Mayors.
You want to be excused?
Please, if I may po.
And we can detain.
I have my flight at 12.
Commodore, just tell us. But if you want
And
to
flight, I think we have to excuse you.
okay. Commissioner, please accept our token.
Thank you,
To
sir.
you.
Thank you.
Please use that here. Thank you very much. Let's give a big round of applause to Commissioner Albert de la Cruz. Maraming salamat, Commissioner. Okay. Okay, please.
Good morning.
I defer
I'm
to you.
Susan Amoroso of the Maritime Journalists Association of the Philippines. Mamaya po kasi merong press forum ang mga graduates po at nasa sensitibong posisyon ang mga alumni ng Philippine Merchant Marine Academy. Sinasabi po nila doon in our previous forum na bakit daw ang Philippine government hindi daw sila kinukonsulta samantalang sila daw ang mas on the ground. Of course, meron din pong PMA alumni na nasa Coast Guard. Pero ano po ang masasabi niyo dito sa position nila? That they are much willing to help and collaborate with the Philippine government on how to better position the Philippine Coast Guard para wag masyadong maging aggressive ang China. My second question is, marami po akong mga kaibigang journalist na sinasabi nila, China daw is not the aggressor. Nakikipag-align daw ang Pilipinas sa US, pero history tells us, mas aggressive daw, iiwan daw tayo sa area ng US. And other, siguro,
what kung sino man yung ating mga
Okay.
kaalyado ngayon. So sa tingin niyo po ba, China is not the aggressor now?
Okay. Commodore.
Ito yung mga favorite kong tanong, sir, pag napag-uusapan. But first of all, regarding your recommendation, wherein the PMMA Alumni Association intends to give the recommendation to the West Philippine Sea concern, the National Task Force West Philippine Sea is always open to any recommendation. If they want, they can write to the chairman of the National Task Force West Philippine Sea to seek audience to the National Security Advisor if they think they have a much more sound solution to our issue in the West Philippine Sea. The national government is open to a whole of nation approach. No? So our National Security Advisor, Eduardo Año, can sit down with them if they want. But first of all, they need to write and share their idea if NTF-WPS can hear their concern. Regarding your second question, ang issue, Amerika ba talaga ang dahilan kung bakit nagkakagulo tayo sa West Philippine Sea? Ma'am, tingin nyo. Bigla ang tanong lang. Do you
Of course
actually
not.
believe na Amerika ang dahilan kung bakit nagkakagulo sa West Philippine Sea?
Hindi po.
Hindi po. One good example of this, 1992, umalis ang base militar dito sa Pilipinas. 3 years after that, they took over Mischief Reef. Ang issue natin, Amerika ba? Hindi. Because the American bases already left and they took Mischief Reef in 1995. 2012, fast forward, there was a standoff. Noong panahon ng 2012, hindi pa natin pinag-uusapan ang Visiting Forces Agreement, hindi natin pinag-uusapan ang EDCA, and yet, the Scarborough Shoal standoff happened. Amerika pa din ba ang dahilan dito?
Sir,
20
sandali lang po.
Yes,
Teka lang
ma'am.
po, sasabihin ko. I just want to affirm what you said. Kasi po kanina nakataxi ako. Sabi ng taxi driver, kasi umalis kasi yung base ng US, kaya nakapasok na yung China. Pero kung nandito ang US bases, baka hindi. Sabi po yan ng taxi driver. Ha?
Buti pa yung taxi ma'am. No? 2016 to 2022, the former president no longer allowed to have balikatan exercises. In short, we keep a distance away from the Americans. From 2016 to 2022, the foreign policy direction of the former president has become more on appeasement towards the People's Republic of China. But in those duration, harassment to the Filipino fishermen still happening. Water cannoning of our resupply boats are also being conducted. Shadowing, illegal presence, swarming. All of this that we are reporting now under this administration has been happening as well during the time of the former President Duterte. Now, the question is, Amerika pa rin ba ang dahilan kung bakit meron tayong ganito? No. The main reason why things are happening this way in the West Philippine Sea, it is because of the illegal, ambitious, and greedy intention of the People's Republic of China to justify their imaginary and illegitimate 10-dash line. Ngayon, 10-dash line na ma'am. Imagine, paano sa susunod sa makalawa, maging 11, 12, 13 na. The question is, ang mga Pilipino ba magpapauto sa linya na to ng pro-China? The narrative that it is the Americans who trigger or provoke the Philippine government to go against China is actually a lie. They just want to disunite the Filipino people, not to be united in countering their illegal presence. It's only for us, no? For us to be more united and express our support to the Philippine government. Ang ginagawa po ng ating Pangulo ay magkaisa tayo, tindigan natin ang West Philippine Sea. Ating pong tandaan, no? Ang laban ng West Philippine Sea, this will go beyond the administration. Hindi lang po ito laban ni Pangulong Marcos. It's not just a fight for this administration until 2028. Ang laban ng West Philippine Sea, laban po ito ng lahat ng Pilipino.
Okay.
Sir, a follow-up. What can you say about the journalists who give to China, tapos ngayon pro-China sila? Ang stance nila?
No comment.
Okay, so we'll entertain maybe 2 more questions.
Ay po, good morning. I'm Ara Perez from ABS-CBN. Commodore, your thoughts po dun sa sinasabi na gentleman's agreement between the Philippine government by the Duterte administration back then and China na ayun nga daw po, which barred the country from sending repair materials to the BRP Sierra Madre in the Ayungin Shoal. Your thoughts on that po? Yung gentleman's agreement na sinasabi ni former presidential spokesperson Harry Roque.
Well, our president has already spoken and responded to this concern. No? Our president right now, President Bongbong Marcos, he is the chief architect of our foreign policy. If ever there is in which he is also not aware, he said he's going to rescind it. This was already responded by President Marcos a few months ago. No? Ngayon na lang uli naman nabubuhay. So in short, there's no reason for us to talk about this. Secondly, yung issue na ang agreement ba, bawal tayo magdala ng construction supplies. Why would we even listen to a country that is 600 nautical miles away sa Ayungin Shoal at sila magdidikta kung ano ang dapat nating dalhin sa BRP Sierra Madre? As what we have been mentioning, the National Task Force West Philippine Sea, Ayungin Shoal falls within our exclusive economic zone. We have sovereign rights over this. BRP Sierra Madre is an active commissioned Navy vessel. So there is no reason for us to listen to whatever demands that they are asking na bawal ang construction materials sa dalhin dito.
Salamat po. Sir,
Okay.
sorry, dalawa pa po kami sana magtatanong. Opo, sir, yung, I just want to know your thoughts, Commodore, about po doon sa article ng Global Times na sinasabi nilang fishermen have refused to be used as pawns by the current administration in the conflict.
Again, this is another lie on the part of the People's Republic of China. They want, because since the start of the year, no, we have been engaging Filipino fishermen. As a matter of fact, first day of February this year, the National Security Advisor issued directive to the Philippine Coast Guard and the Bureau of Fisheries and Aquatic Resources to maintain rotational deployment in Bajo de Masinloc, wherein more Filipino fishermen has expressed their appreciation for the Philippine government that the Coast Guard now is maintaining our patrol together with BFAR in Bajo de Masinloc. Dahil sabi nga nila, mas nakakapangisda na sila rito. Now, I think that's an article that they released 2 days ago. Sinasabing they were able to interview a Filipino fisherman na ang kinakausap naman nila ay isang babae. No? Alam nyo, sa tagal na natin, no, na I think our media friends can support this argument. Kailan naman tayo nakakita ng babaeng mangingisda na pumupunta sa Bajo de Masinloc? Diba? Secondly, they also identified a particular male fisherman na sinabi nila dyan. Our investigative journalists can do their own research, no, to check on the personality of this identified Filipino fisherman na in interview ng Global Times. He's not actually a fisherman. He's actually a crew of a passenger boat, no, na tumatawid sa Zambales. So those two people that they interviewed na nagkikriticize sa sinasabing they are being used as pawn ng Philippine government is absolutely not true, and that's a fake story because all of those people that they interviewed are not really engaged in fishing in Bajo de Masinloc.
Okay. There will be a resupply mission. I don't know when. In this next resupply mission to BRP Sierra Madre, will the Philippine Coast Guard be alone in this resupply mission, or will there be other forces joining us in this resupply mission?
Well, first of all, sir, no, let me clarify that the resupply operation in Ayungin Shoal is a military operation. Therefore, it is decided by the Department of National Defense and Armed Forces of the Philippines. With regard to the Philippine Coast Guard, we are just tasked to provide security escort on their supply boats that they are using to carry the soldiers for rotation and also their supplies on board BRP Sierra Madre. As to whatever guidance of the armed forces of the Philippines will be, or the National Task Force West Philippine Sea will give to the Philippine Coast Guard, our Commandant, Admiral Ronnie Hilgavan, has expressed his commitment na kahit ano pa ang ipag-utos sa atin ng NTF-WPS at ng Armed Forces of the Philippines to realize a much more safer and successful resupply operation. The Philippine Coast Guard will not hesitate to carry out the missions.
So anyway, it's the Department of National Defense that can answer that question. And I will not press the issue since it's outside the scope of your authority to speak about. Any other questions?
Sir, good morning, sir. I'm JP Soriano from GMA. Sir, based lang doon, pinapatanong lang actually, sir. Based sa latest monitoring, how many, meron pa bang ships, militia ships, Chinese militia ships sa Ulan, Felipe? As of today, I mean, sa task force lang, baka may nakuha kayong information. How many are still there, if you have that information, sir?
JP, sorry wala akong authority ngayon nito na sagutin ko tanong na to.
Okay. Pero sir, ano naman, na-monitor niyo naman sir, yung mga taga-Pag-asa Island daw, sinasabi parang they have seen daw parang lumalapit na rin yung mga ships ng China sa areas na hindi naman usually pumupunta doon. Have you heard about that too, sir?
I think that was a video footage that they uploaded sa TikTok. No?
Opo.
I think the China Coast Guard 5301 yata yung sinasabi ng mga taga-Pag-asa na appearing to be getting closer sa Pag-asa. But actually the distance is still somewhere between 4 to 5 nautical miles. We received the report. We're still validating because those are just statements coming from the locals of Pag-asa. But definitely the Philippine Coast Guard together with the Armed Forces of the Philippines will make a report on this and then submit this to the National Task Force West Philippine Sea. And then it's for the Department of Foreign Affairs to take action on this, whether diplomatic protest merits this kind of incident. Because in Pag-asa, since it is a rock, no, it generates a territorial sea. So the 12 nautical mile from the shoreline of Pag-asa, we have territorial sea over these waters.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Okay, so can we just limit it the questions? Okay.
Last question lang po from DGME Felix Laban po. May na mga nagpapatanong po. Yung bansa pong Vietnam, napakaliit po nito. Pero minsan na rin po silang binuling ng China. At ito'y nagpakita po sila ng tapang. Pero hindi naman po sinabing makipaggera. Nagpakita rin po sila ng tapang at kalaunan po, hindi na po sila nabubuli ng China. Siguro po, kasabi po na sa tanong, baka pwedeng gawin din natin ito para hindi na tayo ginagawa ng ganito ng pambubuli ng China.
Well, una sa lahat, sir, no? The mere fact that our Philippine Coast Guard vessels are still maintaining our presence in the West Philippine Sea is definitely still already a show of bravery and patriotism to carry out our duty in the West Philippine Sea. Hindi naman natin masasabing duwag na ang Coast Guard at ang Armed Forces of the Philippines dahil hindi tayo nakikipagbombahan ng tubig, hindi tayo nakikipagbanggaan. The mere fact that we are still holding the line in these waters and we choose to be professional and documenting these illegal actions and rely on the diplomatic approaches to respond to this issue is something that we still need to appreciate. And secondly, how do we define ba na masasabi nating tumatapang na ang Coast Guard at tumatapang ang Armed Forces of the Philippines? Kailangan ba talaga nating makipag-water cannon? Katulad ng sinasabi ng mga iba dyan. Again, I've been asked a lot of times, bakit daw ang Coast Guard hindi makipag-water cannon sa China Coast Guard kapag wina-water cannon tayo? The question is, what will be the strategic gain kung makipag-water cannon tayo? If we are going to be like them already, that they no longer respect the international law, that they no longer identify themselves as a Coast Guard na nagpapahalaga ng maritime safety. Our Coast Guard identity that we share with other countries like United States, Japan, Malaysia, Vietnam, and even Indonesia identifies ourselves as Coast Guard that supports maritime safety. The reason why we have water cannon on board is to conduct firefighting. No? Kapag may nasusunog na dagat sa karagatan, gagamitin natin ito. It is not intended to inflict injury or damage to any other watercraft. So, I don't see any reason para masabi natin naduwag na ba tayo dahil hindi tayo nakiki-water cannon? Or we are braver because we choose to align and adhere to the international law.
Okay, maraming salamat sa lahat ng ating mga kaibigan sa media. Palakpakan po natin si Commodore J. Carriera at ang buong Philippine Coast Guard. Malaki ang ginagawa niyo para sa ating bayan. We appreciate your sacrifices, your efforts, and your steadfastness. Final words sa ating mga mamamayang Pilipino. Ano naman ang magagawa ng mamamayang Pilipino sa harap ng mga issue na nakapaloob sa West Philippine Sea? Itong bagay sinabi mo, it is whole of nation approach. Bawat isa ay mayroong tungkulin na dapat gampanan. Ano ang masasabi mo sa ating mga kababayan? Ano ang pwede nilang maging ambag dito sa ating pakikipaglaban para sa ating mga karapatan sa West Philippine Sea?
Alam niyo sir, napakalaking role na maiaambag ng ordinaryong Pilipino sa ating laban sa West Philippine Sea. Since we started the transparency strategy, the Chinese government, the People's Republic of China, has intensified their information operation. When we say intensified their information operation, ito yung pagpapalaganap ng mga maling informasyon, fake news, paggamit ng troll sa social media. Ngayon, since we have become very effective in telling the world and telling the Filipino people of what's happening, ang China naman, tahasan ang pagpapalaganap nila ng mga maling impormasyon. Katulad ng naging tanong kanina, na ang issue rito, kaya tumitindi ang tensyon sa West Philippine Sea, ay dahil lamang sa pag-uudyok ng Amerika. This is another fake news. No? Secondly, dahil daw ang Pangulong Bongbong Marcos ay dinidiktahan lang ng gobyerno ng Amerika. These are the type of fake news na dapat nating i-address. No? Ngayon, what is the role of the Filipino people? Ang pinakamahalagang magiging kontribusyon ng bawat Pilipino dito, dahil alam naman natin na ang karamihan ng mga Pilipino use social media. No? And most often than not, they are also using social media platforms as means for them to get news and updated information about the current events. Kung ikaw ay nakakita no, ng maling impormasyon sa Facebook, sa Instagram, sa Twitter, I think the most important and patriotic duty na maiko-contribute mo sa laban natin sa West Philippine Sea, please care to comment no, and call out na itong ipinost ng isang journalista na to or ng isang troll na to or isang influencer na to ay maling impormasyon. You can actually Google the right information, put that on the comment para sa mga susunod na Pilipino na makakakita sa newsfeed nila ng impormasyon na to will already be educated and informed na yung binabasa nila. Ang social media ngayon ay napakahalagang medium no for us to win our fight in the West Philippine Sea. If our country will not be united in our fight with the West Philippine Sea, sinasabi ko po sa inyo, we need to take advantage right now that our President Bongbong Marcos, has made the commitment and promise that he's not going to surrender a square inch of our territory. Ang issue po ng West Philippine Sea doesn't define only those people who are living in Palawan or in Zambales or dependent in fishing sector. No? Ang laban po natin sa West Philippine Sea, kailangan nating maisabuhay ang pagiging Pilipino. Ang nakakalungkot po, may mga Pilipinong nagsasabing, ang usapin sa West Philippine Sea, hindi yan nagmamatter sa amin dahil taga Mindanao kami, taga Visayas kami, or we're even living po ng West Philippine Sea, ang usapin natin dito ay usapin bilang Pilipinas. At kung saan po kayo nakatira, hanggang tinatawag niyo po ang sarili niyo na Pilipino, dapat po tindigan natin lahat ito dahil ang usapin sa West Philippine Sea, utang po natin ito sa susunod na saling lahi ng Pilipino. If we're going to give up now on our fight for the West Philippine Sea, look at the eyes of your children or your grandchildren. Sabihin niyo ngayon, ng laban ng West Philippine Sea, sa mga susunod na saling lahi ng Pilipino, wala na kayong aasahan. That is a statement na I think majority of the Filipinos cannot tell their own children and their grandchildren. Kung kinikilabutan pa rin po kayo sa salitang yan, I think we are all still patriotic and we're still willing to share our time and our patriotic duty to fight for the West Philippine Sea. Again, uulitin ko po, hindi po laban ng Coast Guard, hindi laban ng Armed Forces of the Philippines. Laban po ito ng lahat ng Pilipino.
With those final words, we now declare this Kapihan sa Manila Hotel Friday edition adjourned. Maraming salamat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.